Everybody welcome, and everybody out there in Zoom land, thanks for coming in. This is Phil Phillips. He is a Jefferson native, but before he really got going in his Social Security, he served in the U.S. Navy, graduated from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and was hired by the Social Security Administration in August of 1976, 50 years ago. In his career, he worked in La Crosse, Carroll, Sioux City, Council Bluffs, and in Kansas City South office, and he retired in 2014 as a manager of the Carroll office. During his career, he's helped hundreds, maybe even thousands of people with their retirement Social Security related needs. Since retirement, he's helped many individuals in the Carroll area make the important decisions on when to file for Social Security. In addition to Social Security, Phil served on the Carroll City Council and on the Carroll School Board. He is active in his church and taught CCD classes for 25 years. He is taught as a substitute at Kemper. He is married with 2 children, 12 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way.
Yes.
Any day.
I had to correct him this morning. She's due. And my daughter's actually in Ohio with her. And any day.
Ready to go.
We're just waiting for the right date so that I can remember.
Carol is married, or Phil is married to his wife, Michelle. And how many years have you been married?
37.
37 years.
My first wife was killed in a car accident. We were married 10 years. Altogether, 50.
50, so.
2 years single again, and then got remarried.
We had the pleasure of meeting Michelle a month ago, and she is a very, very nice person. So, yeah, she is. Match made in heaven.
Yes.
So with that, yeah. Phil Phillips.
It's completely off the subject, but it's an interesting story. So you should confront me sometime, and I'll tell you it. So my name is Phil Phillips, and I didn't make that up. I always like to start with a little joke because it helps me relax, and hopefully you can laugh about it. Okay, so this is going to be a different joke. Jim, when many years ago, I had to give a whole bunch of speeches about the prescription drug program that we were starting, and probably gave 100 speeches, and I had 5 jokes, and I would just switch them, Okay, so this is the second one. So there was a new pastor at the church, young guy, and he was a good pastor, but he didn't like difficult situations. He'd get really nervous. And he had these 2 parishioners, Phil and Michelle, and they were at Mass every day. Every day, he'd count on them. They always sat in the same place, right on the right side, and he would that'd be kind of his reassurance that they were there. Well, one day, Phil isn't there. It's only Michelle. And not only that, but Michelle is crying. Oh, he just, oh my, what am I going to do? Should I go out there and say something or just ignore it, pretend it isn't happening? He finally decided he had to go talk to her. So he goes over to talk to her and says, Michelle, I noticed that, all through Mass, you're crying. Is something wrong? She said, yeah, Phil died this morning. Oh, now he's really in the loop because he didn't know what to say now. It just casts around in his mind and finally says, well, sometimes a person says some last words and we can take comfort from that. Did Phil have any last words? She said, yeah, he did. He said 5. He said 5 words. And she didn't say anything. He said, well, what did she say? What did he say? He said, Michelle, put down the gun. Got a better laugh that time. Yeah, so anyway. So, yeah. These are the things that she went immediately to confession, got absolution. She's still going to heaven. Phil, we're not sure about him. Okay, so this is what I plan to cover. How your benefit is determined, when you should start your Social Security, how work affects your Social Security when you're drawing benefits, what information is available on the Social Security website, and some unusual situations, and then a case study. Okay. Is there anything you had a burning question? I want to ask a Social Security person this question. Anybody have a question like that? All right. 2. What?
Number 2 up there. When should I start my benefit?
That's the big question. And especially for those of you who haven't started yet, that's right to the point.
Okay.
I actually addressed that question. So we're going to talk about that. Not in length, but So anyway,
No,
uh,
people in Zoom when we talk can't hear us, Lily. Are they able to pick that up?
okay, the question,
What we'll do is if you have a question, raise your hand, then I'm going to come and let you talk into the mic so that people
oh,
in
okay.
Zoom could hear.
So
So
why don't you say what he asked?
yeah, yeah.
So Bill asked, um, what's going to happen? The Social Security's going to run out of money. And I said, well, I'm going to address that issue.
We are going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that. Okay, so the first point I'd say about it, and I don't think it's up there, that is the cost of living is adjusted each year with the check that comes in January. So it's based on the Department of Labor's statistic about the rate of inflation. And I think this last year was about 2.5%. So it's done every January. I don't, in the numbers that I'm going to give, I don't use inflation at all. And I guess Tim has a program which does use inflation, and it'll give you more accurate if you need that. Okay. Social Security checks are paid after the month's over. So the April check comes in May. They're paid on the second, third, and fourth Wednesday of the month, depending on the day you were born in the month. So like I'm born, I got to quit doing that. I'm born on the 29th. So I get my check on the fourth Wednesday of the month. So if you're born 1st through 10th, you get it on the 2nd, 11th through 20, you get it on the 3rd, and so on. Okay, Social Security benefits are taxed. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, Social Security benefits are taxed. So for a couple, their gross income is over $32,000. They pay tax on 25% of their Social Security. So what number are we talking about? So if you imagined your 1040, the number at the bottom, that's the number we're talking about. All your income, including half of your Social Security. Okay, it's more than 32,000 for a couple, you pay tax on half of it. If it's more than 44,000, you pay tax on 85% of your Social Security. So the good news is you don't pay tax on all the Social Security you get. Those numbers have not changed since they set them in the early 80s. So they're very low. Back then in the 80s, that was a pretty high number. It's not a high number now. The amount for individuals is 25,000, equivalent of 50%, 32,000, 85%. Question about that? Okay, benefits are not paid retroactively. So if I wanted to start my benefits in March, it's too late. It's April. I could start in April, but I couldn't go back to March. That's what I mean. If you delayed retirement past full retirement age, then it can be taken back up to 6 months. So for example, there was a rule that allowed me, when I turned 66, to file on Michelle's record without filing on my own. It's done away with. You can't do it anymore, but you could then. So I filed on Michelle's record thinking I'm going to let mine grow from 66 to 70 to get all those delayed retirement credits. And then when I was 69, Michelle got sick. She had cancer. And the whole reason I was waiting was for her benefit as a widow. So I thought, well, she's going to die. There's no point in me building up my Social Security. So I filed in August, the year I was 69. I could have gone back to February if I wanted to, get those 6 months back pay. That's what I mean by going retroactive. So if you have planned to wait until 70, something happens between 67 and 70, you file, you could at that point go back 6 months if you wanted to. But like me, you might not want to. And the other thing I'd say about that is I've never regretted that. Taking it earlier than I had planned. I've never regretted it. And I think I'm probably going to say this again, but I'll say it now. There's no wrong time to file for Social Security. It's just your time. There's a lot of factors that you want to think about. I like my job. I don't like my job. I'm not married. I am married. My life is a lot younger than I am. She's older than I am. So there's a lot of factors, and there's, if you talk to somebody like me or Tim, you could get, well, here's what we think is the best time financially for you to get the most Social Security. But maybe that doesn't work out for you. Okay. Normally, legislative changes don't affect people at or near retirement. Doesn't mean Congress can't do that, but they Generally, they don't do that. For example, the increasing the retirement age from full retirement age from 65 to 67, that began phased in. The plan for it affected people that were in their 40s at that time. So they had plenty of time to prepare for that change. And then it was phased in over a 20-year period, 2 months at a time. So that's kind of typical. And that's what I would expect. Getting to your question right now. Okay, so there's some question about how the government has spent the trust fund. And there's some concern about it's running out of money. And so what I would say about that is 55 million people get Social Security. It's a very sensitive program politically. In fact, it's so sensitive, they haven't done anything since the 80s, 40 years. So if you look back to the early 80s, it was a time when we were running out of money then. So what did Congress do? They changed the benefit formula. They eliminated some benefits. They increased taxes dramatically. And it put the trust funds in a very sound position until the next few years, and we're going to run out of money again. So I'm confident. So the government is going to do something. And the sooner they do it, the less drastic it has to do. And more than likely, it's not going to affect you. More than likely. Doesn't mean it won't, but that would be my gut feeling. It's not going to affect you. Questions about that? That's a good question. So frustrating. If they had done something as simple as changing the cost of living increase back 30 years ago, problem would have been solved. But now you're going to have to do something more drastic. And the longer they wait, the more drastic it's going to have to be.
Whatever said, very sensitive issue. If you raise taxes, people are going to be mad. If you cut benefits, people are going to be mad. If you delay full retirement age, people are going to be mad. So there's really no easy way to do it. Something's going to happen. It's probably going to be a combination of raising full retirement age or making it so you can't elect benefits at 62. Now all of a sudden it's 65, something along those lines. Raising taxes right now, I think the number is 180 some thousand, 83,000, 86,000 is the maximum amount of income that is taxed for Social Security benefits. Anything above that, you're not getting Social Security. Well, Social Security, Medicare still comes out, but Social Security tax doesn't come out of that. But then you're no longer entitled for additional benefits, of course, thereafter. But they might look to raise the Social Security income limitations as well, too. So
and I actually think that's probably one of the more likely. And
it gets adjusted for inflation right now, too. That number goes up every year. The amount of income that's subject to Social Security tax. Yeah. Yeah, not that long ago. Now the max said it's in the 180s. So right now, the last I knew, the Social Security Trust Fund was supposed to start having problems in 2032, I believe, or 2033. And all that just simply means is that the amount of expected dollars going out in Social Security is not at least matched by what's coming in. So right now, there's more coming in than what's going out. But in that year, in 2032 or 2033, whichever one is, that's the first year where we don't have as much money coming into the Social Security Trust Fund that's going out. That's going to be where they're at. So Congress will have to try to act on that before then. So
is somebody that is not drawing Social Security yet, but I'm having these thoughts about whether I should or should not. Is that something that I should consider?
No.
Okay.
No. Because like I said, more than likely it won't affect those at or close to retirement. Now, raising the taxes, if you make that much money, it is going to affect you, but that's different than your Social Security being less or
I added to your list that the other thing I would add is genetics and longevity would be factored into that. If you have a family history of not living so long, maybe earlier is better.
Yes, absolutely, Bill. Absolutely.
But that's anybody's guess.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to talk about this, but my feeling is people think they're not going to live as long as they actually probably are. So lots of times you look at your parents, and like my dad, he died when he was 67. Well, my dad smoked his whole life. I smoked a few years, but not 40 years. And so you can't, and medical treatment has improved over the years. And the life expectancy tables tell us that half the people our age are going to be dead at the life expectancy. So half are still alive. So in my opinion, it's better to wait to plan to live longer rather than shorter. But certainly if your health is bad, if you were diagnosed with cancer, that'd be a factor where and you don't have a survivor, it might be a reason to file. All right, Medicare. You can file for Medicare without filing for cash benefits, and you should at age 65. There are three main parts, I would say, of Medicare. One is Part A, which covers hospital. So you go into the hospital, that's when Part A would pay. Part B covers medical expenses, whether you're in the hospital or a doctor's office or wherever you are. That premium is $202.90 per month for most people this year. Part D is the prescription drug program, and Part D has many different plans and many different premiums. So I can't just say it's this amount. It just depends on what you get. High income individuals pay a higher premium for both B and D. Okay, so the amount for a couple, again, we're looking at the same tax return at the bottom line there. If it's over $218,000, then you start to pay a higher premium. If it's for an individual, it's $109,000. Okay, and so why does the government do that? Well, the $202.90 is actually only 1/4 of the cost of the premium. So most of us are getting a pretty good benefit every month just for the health insurance. And my experience is, yeah, it is pretty good. So it was felt it isn't fair for high income individuals to get that 3/4 of the Social Security benefit. So they phased it in, depending on your income, and it starts at $218,000, so that you pay a higher part of the Medicare. And if you make enough money, you pay the whole premium. Okay? Questions about that? Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of things that brings up a topic. If you're working and are covered by your employer's group plan, then you can decline Part B. Now, this individual, that's not quite the same thing, okay? So you can, if you're working and you're covered by your employer's group plan, you can decline Part B, and then when you retire, you can sign up for Part B right then. There's a special enrollment period, it's called. Now, this individual, if he's working, then that would apply. If he's not working, then it doesn't apply. He still has to sign up in the initial enrollment period, which is 3 months before and 3 months after his 65th birthday. If he delays, if he says, well, I don't know, I'm just not going to do that. Well, if he waited those 6 months past his Medicare birthday, he's too late for the initial enrollment period. He'll have to wait until the next year in the general enrollment period, which runs January through March. And then his coverage doesn't begin until July 1st. So more than likely, unless some math is funny, he'll pay a 10% penalty on the Medicare. Now, maybe he wants to do that. I wouldn't think so, but he would pay a penalty. Does that answer that guy's question?
I'm gonna chime in and do this because we end up with a lot of people that go through this that will go be 65, continue to work beyond the employer plan. We want to coincide when they exit the employer's plan and going on Part B at the same time is what we want to do to avoid that 10% penalty. So if long as they're still working, now that COPR thing, I need to check into that, but as long as they're still working, we'd want to coincide that. Because what's probably going to happen is that, especially if it's a high deductible plan, Medicare and your Medicare supplement is going to be much better insurance than the high deductible plan. I know from experience.
Yeah.
So then you got to just kind of outweigh the cost. Do I want to go ahead and go on Medicare and be on a better plan, even though it may cost more than what you're paying through the employer plan. So again, it's like Phil says, everybody's different. Everybody's situation's a little bit different. So we'd invite you to come in and let us run, we'll run the numbers for you.
Yes, that's good advice. That's why I'm kind of careful trying to answer that question. He should talk to somebody to get the answer for himself. But those are the two possibilities, if he's still working or if he's not working. It also applies to a spouse. So say Michelle and I are both working, I decide to retire, and I go on Michelle's group plan. As long as she's still working, I can be covered by her group plan, and I don't have to sign up for Part B if I don't want to. And then when she retires, that's the point where my special enrollment period would begin. And I think it's 9 months. We have a long time.
It really is a long time. We actually have a client in their mid-70s that are still on an employer plan, and have only had Medicare A since they're 65. And now they're thinking about finally completely retiring in their mid-70s and going on Medicare Part B here in the next couple of months. So you just got to make sure you plan and coordinate it correctly, your timing. So,
and it's, again, if this guy took our advice and he waited and then found out later that, oh, you couldn't do that because you weren't working. So it's really particular. And I'd emphasize again, either talk to Tim or his group or Social Security to find out how it affects you. All right. Good. That's what I prefer, to have questions. Okay, full retirement age. For people born in 1960 or later, the full retirement age is 67. So the full retirement age phased in over a 20-year period and jumped every 2 months every few years. It was 66 for more than 1 year, because that was my full retirement age, 66. That's 15 years ago. If you file before full retirement age, your benefit is reduced. If you delay filing after full retirement age up to age 70, you earn a delayed retirement credit. So it's per month. So it's 0.2% per month. So that's 8% a year if you waited a whole year, which is a pretty good investment considering taxes and all that. I mean, to get an 8% net return. Okay, let's see what else I got. Nothing else to say. Okay, so the benefit formula. Is that up here? Yes, it is. Okay, good. So the benefit formula is somewhat complex. They take all of your earnings and bring them up to today's dollar value. Okay, so you can't look at the $2,000 you made in 1980. They don't use that. They use the inflated value, which would be about probably $25,000. So the 25,000 is used, not the 2,000. Anyway, they use 35 years, come up with an average monthly wage, and then you get a percentage of that. And it's 3-tier formula. So it's weighted so that a low-income worker will get a better return than a high-income person. The target is 40%, and it's pretty accurate. So the target is that you'll get about 40% of your pre-retirement income from Social Security. So if you were a lower wage earner, you might get 45 or 50. If you're a high income person, you might get 35 or 30 or even less. So that's the idea. And I'm going to go into more detail later because some people are interested in that. Others aren't, but we'll cross that bridge. Okay. Can you work? Is that on here too? Yes. Okay. So there's kind of two different formulas. One is based on the year you reach full retirement age, and the other one is for all the years before you reach full retirement age. Once you reach full retirement age, there is no test for your work. You can make $1 million a year and still get Social Security. Okay, so for the people that are under full retirement age, the amount they can make this year is, you've got 25. For some reason, you're 24. I had 23, but you're probably right. So that's the amount, $24,480. If you make less than that, you can get a check for every month that you sign up for. If you make more than that, $1 for 2 is withheld from your Social Security of the amount over $24,480. So if you made $26,480, that's $2,000 over the limit, you withhold $1,000 from your Social Security checks. Okay. Now, not everybody's born in January. Not everybody retires in January. The retirement test works January through December, regardless of that. So say you'd retired in August, and from January to August, you made $100,000. Well, based on the annual, you wouldn't get a check. But the fact that you're not working or you make less than $1,950, there it is down here. In a month, you can get a check for that month, even though you made $100,000 during the year. So September, October, November, December, you make less than $1,950, you get a check for that month, in spite of the fact that you made $100,000. Okay, questions about that? Okay, good. So the year you reach full retirement age, it jumps up a lot. So $65,160 this year. The other factor is instead of 1 per 2, it's 1 per 3. And probably the biggest thing is only count your earnings up to the month before the month you reach full retirement age. So for example, I was full retirement age in August, and it's only going to count what I made through July 31st, whatever my year-to-date was, that's what would apply. If I were self-employed, it would be 7/12 of whatever I made for the year. So if I made $120,000, that going to work out? The 70,000 would be what would be used, not the 120 I made. Okay. And then there's a corresponding monthly test also. So it's quite high, 5,180. Now you might have a question, and I guess I didn't address this before, but if you're self-employed, how does that work? Okay, so for a self-employed person, it's based on the number of hours they work in the month. So if they work less than 45 hours, that's considered less than the 1950, and you get a check for that month. And it really probably affects farmers more than anybody else. If you're a farmer, there are a couple of rules that you might want to know about. Should I tell about that? Sure. Okay, so it's kind of complicated. There's called a carryover crop exclusion. So what that means is many farmers, if not most, raise a crop in 2026 and sell it in 2027. So they carry over their crop into the next year. Well, there's a rule under Social Security where if you start your benefits in 1 year, the second year, your carryover crop is not counted. So typically for a farmer, December or November, and sometimes I suppose October, they've harvested their crop. They're not working at all. So they work less than 45 hours, even though they made $100,000 that year. They can get a check for December because they work less than 45 hours. And then the next year, they carry over that crop. They made $200,000 worth of corn that year, and they sold it in 27. That is not counted towards that retirement test. That's very particular. You have to have started your benefits. It can't be the first year. So if he didn't file in December, that rule doesn't apply. So again, it affects farmers more than anybody else.
And Phil, just for clarification, these rules only apply if you're taking Social Security before your full retirement age. Is that correct?
No. Yes. Because after your full retirement age,
full retirement age, it doesn't matter. Go make
Doesn't
your $1
matter.
million and it doesn't matter. So these are only if you take your benefit
So
for full retirement age.
the perfect scenario would be, well, perfect scenario. It really is meant for somebody who retires before full retirement age. So somebody at 65, so they're gonna carry over the crop to the year they're 66. And where the amount you can make it a lot lower for that. Yes, sir.
So if you're a landowner and our share crop, what is that?
Rental income doesn't count. Why don't you?
Rental income, the question is if you're sharecropping, does that income count? Rental doesn't. This is earned
only.
Earned income.
Yeah.
Earned income you make from working.
I say work because you feel like you earned your rental income, but it's work income.
Gotcha.
So you're not what they call materially participating in the farming. So it's rental income.
That's a phrase that you'll hear Max and I talk about a lot is earned income versus passive income. Because there's a big difference in different rules, like from IRAs to Social Security, all are factored by earned income versus passive income.
Yeah. All right, good. It's good that we got that fact out. Okay. Okay, now some people, this will be interesting to them. many of you your eyes will kind of glaze over and you'll start to fall asleep. So I'm going to talk to you about how the benefit is figured. I'm going to go through some numbers. It's kind of a complex formula. Again, like I said before, the idea is to produce 40% of your pre-retirement income. So they take all of your earnings in every year, and it's not up there. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. Well, yes. Yeah. Let me just talk about it. And then I think it is on the next slide. We can skip back if we have to, and we probably will. Nope. There, stop. Okay. So they take your earnings. So for example, let's say in 1980, you made $6,000. Well, in today's dollars, that's $30,588. So the 30,000 would be what they would use in that formula, okay, to come up with the average monthly wage. And you can see the other years. Now you can skip back. Go back. Okay, so first point, we use 35 years most of the time. If you were disabled prior to age to full retirement age, then those years are dropped out. Okay, any year you were disabled. But that only affects a few people, but it does affect some people. Okay, so then they come up with an average monthly wage over those 35 years, and then there's a formula. So this year, and again, it changes every year, you get 90% of the first $1,286, and this is the number that changes every year. And then the second tier is 32% of the amount between these two numbers, and then if it's actually more than that, 77.49, you get 15%. Okay, so that's how it's weighted so to benefit the low wage earner. So if you're always in the 90%, you get a better return than somebody with 10,000. Okay. Now we can skip ahead again. Go one more. Okay. So here's an example. Say after doing all those formulae, your average monthly wage was $10,000. This is how they're going to figure it. So they take 90% times 1,286, 32% of the next figure, and 15% of the next figure. And then Social Security would add those three together, come up with a benefit. It's actually rounded down to 20 cents, and the check would actually be complete dollars. So you're only going to get, well, you're not going to get that 20 cents, $3,563. Okay.
So remember when Phil said it's supposed to replace about 40% of your income, better if you're low income or high or lower if you're a high incomer. This is 35%, 35.63%. In my math, right? Correct?
Right.
Yeah. So remember we said that's how.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably know what the average wage is. It like 45,000?
Well, I'd probably look at Max and ask him what that is. So
yeah, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it might be a little, I don't know.
Is it nationwide? Okay, that's higher. And I suppose everybody together, that's probably where it comes up with 40. Yeah. All right, so now we can go on to something more interesting. When should I start? Okay. You can start anytime between age 62 and 70. Okay, so you got a whole range of times you could begin. And as I said before, there's really no wrong choice. There's just your choice. Now, there might be one choice that I say, well, this is better than that. But again, it's your choice. Okay. So there are a couple of differences. The idea is no matter when you start, if you live to life expectancy, you'll get the same amount of Social Security. That's the idea behind it. Now, the truth is there are a couple of factors that are different. One is if you retire at 62, that means you stop working then. If you retire at 67, you work another 5 years. Those 5 years can increase your benefit. If you work to 70, those 8 years can increase your benefit. That would be one factor. The other factor is that the reduction tables were determined in the 1930s when people didn't live as long as they do today. So what that means is because people live longer today, those reductions are too punitive. They should be adjusted up. And so by starting early, you're actually penalizing yourself because you're actually going to live longer than the reduction has calculated. That's why they don't match up. Generally speaking, if you take a reduced benefit, you're ahead 10 to 15 years. And you're at 67, you're likely to live 20 years. So that 10 to 15 years, you're going to outlive that. Is that clear enough? Okay. The most important factor for many of us is, what's my survivor going to get? And so that's something you need to take into consideration, because whoever's benefit of the couple is the highest, longer that person waits, the more the survivor is going to get. Because the survivor is going to get the highest benefit. Okay. And finally, the final factor is kind of a head thing. Most of it, I remember when I turned 62, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to live much longer. I better start getting Social Security. And I think a lot of people think that they're not going to live very long. But I think the truth is, you're probably going to live longer than you think. And you could look at your parents as a good indicator. But like my dad, he smoked his whole life. He died at 67. I'm 77 now. So you can't always just look at your parents. You have to look at their health and how they lived. The life expectancy tables tell us that half the people our age are going to be dead at that date. So for the men in this room, the life expectancy is about 84. And for the women, it's about 87. So, but that means is that half the people that in the room that are that age will be dead then, meaning the other half are still alive. So I think my bias is to plan to live longer. So, question? All right. Kind of covered this, but I'll go over it again because I think, I don't know, I think people about the work, is that up here again? Yeah. Okay. So the amounts again, if you're under full retirement age, the amount you can make is $24,480. You make more than that, 1 for 2 over the $24,480 is withheld from your checks. And then we do have a monthly test, which is 1/12 of the annual amount, with $19.50 this year. If you make less than that, you can get a check for that month, regardless of how much you made for the year. Okay. Questions about that? I think I've kind of covered that in depth. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Yeah. And that's in the example. And that's probably the most interesting thing. Okay, so I'm going to take a kind of a scenario of this couple, mythical couple. John's born in August of 60. Joan is born in July of 64. John's full retirement age is 67. They're both at 67, but his is in August of 27. His life expectancy is 84 years. So I'm going to assume that he dies that month. Okay. Joan's full retirement age is July of 2031. Her life expectancy is 87, and I'm going to assume that she dies in July of 51. Okay. So Social Security benefit amounts. John's benefit, it's $2,500 at full retirement age, and $1,760 at age 62, and $3,100 at age 70. And Joan's amounts are $1,950, $1,373, and $2,418. It's 24. That's $2,418, not $29.
Full retirement age.
Oh yeah, this is $1,900 and $2,400. So, all right. So scenario 1, John and Joan file as soon as they can. So in September of 22, John starts his benefit. He gets $1,760. Now you'll notice he didn't get August. He was 62 in August. Why? You have to be 62 throughout the month. So unless you were born on the 2nd or 1st, you have to wait till the first full month. And in his lifetime, he receives a total of $461,120. That's up there. Okay, so Joan files in August of 26. She gets $1,373, and at his death, she's received $295,000 on her own record. She gets the $1,760 he was getting. She receives an additional $147,840. So grand total for John, $461,000. For Joan, $443,000. Total for the family, $904,000. Okay. So scenario 2. John waits until he's 70. Joan starts at full retirement age. Okay. That up there? Yeah. Okay, so in August of 2030, John starts getting $3,100 a month. During his lifetime, he gets $517,000. Joan files in August of 31 when she's 67. It's 1950. And at John's death, she's received $302,000 on her own record. Then she gets $3,100 survivor benefits, so she gets an additional $260,000. Grand total, $517,000 for John, $562,000 for Joan, $1,080,000, which is $176,000 more than scenario one. And again, the reason is mainly the reduction factors. They're off kilter. Now, just something Congress is probably never going to do anything about. Questions? Now, if I sat down with you and did a similar comparison, it'd probably come up and I would probably say, okay, you should start it, assuming your benefit is higher, which I think it is. You should wait until 70 if your health is fairly good, and you should start us whenever you want to. Because your benefit is not really relevant. I mean, it is relevant, but it doesn't affect ultimately, because his is what you're going to get if you survive it. And that would be, I mean, if, without having to do the numbers, that would be what I would say to any of you. Whoever benefit is the higher, wait as long as possible. Now, if you could wait till 70, that'd be great. But if you can only wait till full retirement age, you know, so, some people like their jobs and they don't care if they ever retire. Can't say that I was that way, but I certainly didn't want to retire early. Other people hate their jobs and they want to quit as soon as they can. And so that's certainly a big factor. And that's why I always go back to, there's no wrong time. There's just your time.
Here, other factors, even though it seems like it's something so presenting that it's better off waiting. And I would like to hear you say that there is no right time, it's the right time for each.
And that's right. That's right. Because it, you know, I certainly met enough people. You know, you as a young employee, you learn things you shouldn't say. And one of them was to say, well, that's not right. You shouldn't file then. You know, well, I hate my job and I want to.
Yeah, people all the time are talking about when should you file, and well, my neighbor did this or a coworker did this, and it's such a specific question to who you're talking to, and it's just so much different for everybody. And one thing that we want to know is that, okay, yeah, there's a lot of factors that Phil talked about, but then what is your income needs? You know, how much income do you need right now to live at this point in your retirement? What are your asset situation like? How much you have in investments? Can we pull from investments to provide income and have that to help you delay Social Security? So there's so many other factors. There's probably 10 plus factors that determine, I think, when really makes sense. And so it's not just a siloed question. I just think there's a lot of things that go into play. And so that's where, when we look to do analysis, I mean, there's simple break-even analysis and looking at spouses and one spouse versus another and when we're going to break even, but we have to include income needs and asset factor as well too. So there's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of depends on your legacy planning then. If providing a good inheritance to the next generation is important to you, that might be a reason why. But if it's not important to you, then don't. But the one thing remember that we tell people all the time, if you're assuming your full retirement age is 67 and you start taking Social Security at 62, that is a 30% deduction that you are going to take for the rest of your life. And unless you change in the first few months, it is hard to go back and that is what sometimes we call those fatal errors, or people don't realize what they've done until it's too late, and that can be frustrating. So the question is, it takes a while to make up those loss amounts. So that's where with our software, we can do scenarios. We can compare 62 to 65 to 67 to 70, and we can tell you where your break even is going to be. All we need to know is your primary insurance amount, which is what you get at full retirement age, which is 67 for most people. But if we know that number, we can do a breakdown and compare all those different ages and give you at what age are you going to break even. Some people it's in the late 70s, some it's in the early 80s. And so then there you go and say, okay, what's my life expectancy? Am I going to beat it or not?
I can tell you about my father-in-law. He, years ago, and this we're talking 30 years ago now, everybody retired at 62. And I think that was part of the reason Jim did. And it wasn't that he ever was short of money. Well, he was short of money, but he was never destitute by any stretch. But the $300 or $400 a month that he would have gotten had he waited would have made a big difference in their lifestyle. So again, there's no wrong time, although there is probably, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of factors, and it's great that these guys have all these tools to help you with that decision more than I just use Social Security. I don't want to know your assets. I don't want to know that, but it certainly makes a big difference if you got a lot of money saved as opposed to not any money saved. All right. Okay. Unusual situations. There's a couple. Yeah. Widows and widowers have a choice. Okay. So they can take one benefit at 62, say, and then switch over to the other one at a later date, 67 or 70 even. So they could, a widow, for example, a woman, a widow, her benefit is, if she waited, well, okay, so she could take her husband's at age 60 and then wait until 70, earn all those delayed retirement credits, and then file on her own record. So for example, in the little example I had, say John died before Joan was 60. So Joan, if she took his benefit at age 60, the amount would be $1,991. So it'd be reduced from the $2,500 down to that because of her age. She could then switch at age 70 and get all those delayed retirement credits and get $2,418 on her own record. Or at 62, she could have taken her own, gotten the 1373, and then at 67, switch over to his. Now, the reason she'd switch at 67 is because widows, survivors don't earn those delayed retirement credits. You have to be alive to earn them. Okay. Okay. Divorced spouses. If you are married 10 years or more to your former spouse, you can get benefits on their record. So there's divorced spouses record and there's divorced survivors benefits. So as a divorced spouse, you could file at 62 on your ex's record. You have to first file on your own. And then if his is his, I always say his, it could be a woman, but generally it is. So as you'd get first on your own, and then if there's some more paid on his record, then you'd get that as a divorced spouse. As the widow, you get whatever he was getting if he happened to draw it. Now, if you remarry before age 60, you can't get benefits on a prior spouse's record until your current marriage ends. If you remarry after age 60, you can go back to, I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, I was doing a contact station in Sparta, Wisconsin, and a widow came in, and she had gotten remarried at age 59 years and 10 months or more. I don't know. She wasn't 60, but it's close, but not quite. She didn't have any idea about that rule. And I said, well, sorry, you just can't. She assumed she could file. I said, sorry, you just can't do it. She said, well, what if I got divorced and remarried him after I was 60? I said, well, you could do that. And so she did. She divorced her current husband. And then when she turned 60, they got remarried. And then she could draw on her first husband. It was kind of a sad situation. I felt sorry for her because she was, of course, embarrassed about the whole thing. But anyway, children can receive benefits up until they're age 18, or if they're still in high school, they can get it until they're 19. Disabled children, if they're disabled prior to age 22, can get benefits on a parent's record, assuming they're not married, forever. The amount of the benefit is half in a life case. The parent is still alive, they can get half of whatever his full retirement age amount was. So in Joan's case, because I remember her 2,500, her disabled son could get $1,250 on her record, or $1,550 on her husband. In a death case, they get 75%. So that's where it would max out. Yes, sir.
Silly question, but so I have a younger daughter, and so if I choose to take Social Security at 67, does that affect her at all?
How old
Or
would she
only
be
if I'm
then?
deceased?
She
She would be 15.
okay, so she can get benefits on your record until she turns 18. And if she's still in high school until she's 19.
Okay,
So yeah, and that's it's
that's why it's quite. If I pass away, correct? Yeah. Okay.
no. If you file for retirement, you would file for her, and she would get benefits until she turned 18 or 19. If she was still in high school, if she was disabled, she'd get it until she married.
But even if I'm still alive, she could still receive Social
Yep.
Security.
Yep. The difference is, as long as you're alive, it's 50%.
Right.
Once you're dead, it's 75.
Yep.
Now, there's also spouse can receive benefits if she has a child under 16 in her care. So depending on how old she is, your wife also might be able to get it. And that's certainly something you want to think about. Maybe you have thought about it.
No, I haven't thought about this. She's good. My wife did.
Yeah, her age doesn't matter. It's having a child under 16 in her care. So she'd get it for a year, and then
Fire bill, that underage.
her age isn't a factor. Her age isn't a factor because she's getting benefits because she has a child under 16 in her care. She could be 20, she could be, well, not 80, but under full retirement age. Her age, again, isn't a factor. It's the fact that she has a child under 16 in her care. It's somewhat unusual. My son-in-law, he started his Social Security, believe it or not, and he's got 5 or 6 kids that he's getting benefits on. And my daughter's working, otherwise she'd be on the record too. There's a calculation. When you have so many, there's a calculation. Is it a benefit to have the wife get file or not? And in her case, no, she shouldn't.
Like my wife's now.
There'd be no reason for her not to, no reason I can think of that she wouldn't want to file. And of course, that's, you're saying wait until full retirement. Well, you can get that benefit. And for your daughter, anytime. So if you filed at 65, she'd get those extra 2 years.
They can't get that until I.
Yeah. See, it's that's also something at your break-even point. If your children are getting benefits, that mitigates some of the reduction you took by starting early.
So
So
do I have to file?
yes. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, so you can catch me if your opinion differs, huh? Yes, they are worth every penny we pay for.
Given several different parts of Social Security, disability and surviving spouse and so forth. How would you respond to that?
You want me to be flippant, or you want me to give you?
Be flippant?
Have you ever gone somewhere on a Tuesday afternoon and seen all the motorhomes that are driving up and down the highway? Those are people who have those motorhomes because of Social Security. They would back before Social Security came into existence, people had no money. They weren't working, they had no money. Now these guys have mitigated that a lot. but it's forced saving. And most of us do not have the discipline to save as we should. The statistics, 50% of, it's more than 50%. A very high number of people, their only income is Social Security. And that's 40% of what they were getting when they retired. And they're living on that. And it's well over 50% of the public. So much as you could, I've only met a few people that actually could, invest the money and have the discipline to stay with it. Most people, they see that $100,000 in their 401k and it's just burning a hole in their pocket. Oh, it burned a hole in my pocket. If it hadn't been married to Michelle, I might have taken the money out. But I didn't, fortunately. But it's just, we just don't have the discipline. We see something we want. We have $100,000 in our 401k. Gee, I could take it out and pay the tax on it and penalty, and I'd still have enough to buy that Miata. Yeah, that's another factor. Yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah. It was not fun to be old back in the day.
Saying it'd be stretched everything with privatized and staying that, what you're basically saying, right?
I'd say
It would be stretched to think we get a privatized retirement.
if it somehow it could be forced, you can't touch it until you're X age. No, Social Security isn't perfect. It isn't a perfect solution to the problem. It's just a solution, and it does what it's intended to do. Gives older people money. Yes, guarantee. Just yep. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. You can weigh in on that? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. The website. Okay. The Social Security website is socialsecurity.gov, and the gov is critically important to get to the right place. So at the website, you can do a lot of different things. One of them is to set up what's called a My Social Security account. Is that mine? Okay. My Social Security account. Now, with a My Social Security account, you see your earnings record. So if you're working, it's good to look at that occasionally and make sure your earnings are getting posted. The other thing, you get a estimate of how much your benefit would be at 62, full retirement age, 70, if you became disabled, or if you died, and how much your survivor would get. So it gives you a lot of good information. Once you start getting Social Security benefits, it has a record of how much you got. And it also has how much is withheld for Medicare and taxes and all that. Yeah, it's worth doing. I used to say it's easy questions. I don't say that anymore. It's not necessarily easy questions, but it's not impossible. Also, in order to file a claim, if you want to file for retirement online, you have to have a My Social Security account. The retirement estimator is an interesting tool. It uses your earnings record to determine how to give you the amount you'd get at retirement. And really what it's a benefit for are younger people. So let's say I'm not a doctor. I'm an attorney and I'm making a lot of money. And I decided I don't like being an attorney anymore. I want to be a school teacher. I'm 50, I'm going to change that. Instead of making 100,000, I'm going to make 25,000. How would that affect my Social Security? The retirement estimator can answer that question. There are also calculators for life expectancy, early or late retirement, and other calculators that I can't think of off the top of my head. You can also apply online for retirement, disability, or Medicare. They've really streamlined the applications. They don't, it's fairly easy to complete, I think, even for a layperson, you've never been at it. Takes about 15 minutes. You can actually file for disability online. That takes a lot longer because there's a lot more questions. Takes about an hour. Let's see. All the pamphlets that we have are online. There's also the trustees report, history of Social Security. Some of it's kind of interesting if you're a history buff. Speeches that Roosevelt made at the time, how it would affect people. There's also information about representatives. So if you're an attorney, you're representing somebody, there's a place for that. The Act and also the Social Security's working manuals are online. Okay, and some people can get, well, anybody that has a card can get a replacement Social Security card, a duplicate Medicare card, or benefit verification letter. And if all else fails, you can get, there's a office locator. So you put in your zip code and you find out where your Social Security office is. I think that's it. Yes, that's it. Oh, yeah. Well, the sign was actually made. This is the house that I grew up in, 207 West Adams, right on the corner of Highway 4 and where the old pink schoolhouse used to be, kind of. Yeah. And anyway, my dad, this is probably June 13th, he made this sign, "Welcome home, Phil." Came home from cruise to Vietnam. So anyway, on June 14th, I flew in, our ship tied up at about 2:30, and then I got the last plane to Des Moines from Norfolk, and I got home about 11 o'clock at night. My parents met me, took me home. We came in the back door, so I didn't see the sign until the next day.
Probably dark.
Yeah, it's probably dark also, yeah, about midnight or after. Yeah, yeah, that's, my dad was a World War II veteran. In fact, our names are on the courthouse. Both Ernest K. Phillips, twice.
So you have fond memories of Jefferson growing up there?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was a perfect place to grow up. You know, you could get on your bike and go to the swimming pool, or we used to go to the cemetery and ride a bike, you know, just to ride a bike to a location. One day I spent all morning going from our house on that house to Highway 30 and back. God knows why I was doing that, but I was doing it. I suppose a precursor to what the riding I do today. Yeah, no, it was a great, and you know, I mean, I'm not the world's best athlete. I wouldn't, if I were in Des Moines, there was no way I'd play football or basketball. But because I was a small town, I could. So. Yes, it is. Yeah. And in fact, the people that bought it, it actually got hit by a car. It's on 4, and a guy passed out, and he veered off the road and hit that front window. And that's when the insurance company found out nobody was living in the house. And so I had to sell it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be covered. Yeah. They bought it in 1950, and I sold it in 1996. Question?
Any more questions? Any more questions out in Zoom land? So, well, everybody, thank you for coming. I hope this was beneficial to you all. I know I still learn new stuff every day, and Phil was a good teacher, so we appreciate you coming, Phil. Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me.